My name is Dustin Martin. I'm writing that first because I've started repeating it in my head like a prayer, and I'm scared that one day soon it will stop sounding familiar. I know how that reads. I know it sounds like I'm trying to make this into a dramatic story. I'm not. I'm tired. I'm embarrassed. And I am at the point where I don't trust my own brain in this apartment. So I'm going to do what people do when they feel cornered by something they can't prove. I'm going to write it down while I still can. I moved to this city because I wanted to disappear in the most boring way possible. New job, new address, no history. A place where nobody recognizes me, where no one asks questions about my past, where I can just work and sleep and pretend I'm fine. When I found the listing for this apartment, the rent was low enough that it immediately felt wrong. The photos were blurry, the description was short, and the landlord answered my questions like he had already answered them 100 times. When I asked why it was so cheap, he didn't say the neighborhood was bad. He didn't mention crime. He didn't even try to sell it. He just stared at me for a moment with this drained look, like he was looking at someone who was already gone. And then he said, very calmly, "If you hear your name at night, don't answer." I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. He didn't laugh back. He slid the key across the counter and added, almost as an afterthought, "And don't mess with the bathroom mirror." That last part landed in my stomach like a rock. I nodded, signed the lease, and told myself he was just a weird older guy who liked scaring new tenants. The building is old in a way that doesn't feel charming. The hallway lights never fully brighten. They hum and flicker like they're fighting sleep. The carpet is dark and soft in a way I can't explain without sounding insane. Like it's been soaked before and never truly dried. Some days it smells like dust and damp paper. Other days it smells like metal, like pennies. Like you've been holding a handful of coins for too long and the smell sticks to your fingers. The elevator has a mirror that makes your face look slightly wrong, like the glass is tired of reflecting people. Even before anything happened, the place already felt like it was trying to keep itself quiet. My unit is room 304. The moment I opened the door, I noticed the air felt heavy, like stepping into a closed car after rain. The windows face another building so close that daylight barely enters, and even at noon, the room looks like it's late evening. The walls are painted white, but it's the kind of white that comes from being painted over too many times, like someone kept trying to cover something underneath. The place is small. There's nowhere to hide. That mattered to me because I wanted safety in the logic of that. If something felt off, I could tell myself it was in my head because there was no space for someone else to be there. That's the idea. That was the comfort. And that comfort lasted less than one night. The first night was quiet, but it wasn't normal quiet. It was thick. It made me aware of every tiny sound my body made. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to sleep. And at first I heard regular building noises. Pipes, a distant door closing, the soft groan of old wood. I told myself, okay, it's fine. Then I heard something that wasn't mechanical. It questions. It was slow, rhythmic, breathing. It came from behind the wall where my headboard touches the wall. So close it felt like it was happening inside my pillow. I froze and tried to be reasonable. Air in the vents, neighbor noise, my imagination. So I tested it in the simplest way I could. I sat up, and the breathing stopped instantly. I lay back down, and the breathing started again, in the exact same place. It wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. That's what made it worse. It sounded like someone trying very hard not to be heard. I didn't sleep much. I kept a lamp on because darkness suddenly felt like permission. I kept checking my phone because time felt safer than silence. At some point, I did drift off, and I woke up the next morning with my jaw aching like I had been clenching it all night. I went to work and acted normal, but I kept thinking about the sound. And the worst part was that my brain started doing that thing where it tries to explain fear by turning it into a joke. I caught myself almost smiling about it, like, wow, I'm getting scared by an old building. That's pathetic. I hate that our minds do that. It's like the brain tries to protect your pride while your body is begging you to pay attention. The second night, something happened that felt personal. At around 2, I heard a soft tapping sound from the bathroom, like fingertips touching glass. I sat up and listened. Tap. Pause. Tap. It wasn't pipes. It wasn't dripping water. It sounded intentional, like someone testing whether I was awake. I walked to the bathroom and turned the light on. The mirror was fogged, completely fogged, like someone had just taken a hot shower. But the shower was dry and cold. The sink was dry. The air in the bathroom was almost chilly. I wiped the mirror with my hand, and under the fog, for a second, I saw letters that weren't mine. Not written in ink, written in the clean path where someone had dragged a finger through the fog. It said my name. It said, Dustin. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like nausea. I wiped again, harder, and the letters smeared and vanished, like the mirror had swallowed them. I stood there staring at my reflection, trying to calm down, trying to force logic into the moment. That's when the mirror shifted under my hand. It moved slightly, like it wasn't fixed properly. I stopped touching it immediately. I remembered the landlord's warning, don't mess with the mirror. For a full minute, I stood there, breathing slowly, telling myself to walk away, telling myself not to do the stupid horror movie thing. But curiosity is not a hobby. It's a compulsion. It sits behind your ribs, and it doesn't let go. My hand went back to the mirror before I even fully decided. I lifted it carefully, and it came away from the wall like a loose cabinet door. Behind it, there was a narrow cavity in the wall, a hidden space, dark and dusty, like a pocket inside the building. And inside that pocket, there was a box. Old, heavy, the kind of box people use for things they can't throw away, but also can't stand to look at. I carried it to the kitchen table and opened it with shaking hands. And the first thing I saw made my mouth go dry. A small bundle of hair tied with string. Brown blonde hair, brittle, like it had been cut a long time ago. I dropped it, and the string bounced against the table like a tiny whip crack. Under the hair were Polaroid photos. I picked one up and felt my skin go cold, because it was me. Not someone similar. Me. Same face, same tired eyes. I flipped it over. A date was written in faded ink. A date from years before I was born. I told myself it had to be fake.
It had to be a prank. It had to be some weird tenant game, because the alternative was not something my brain wanted to hold. There were more photos. Me standing by the window. Me asleep. Me in the bathroom doorway. Me looking toward the hall like I had heard something. In one photo, I was looking straight at the camera, and the expression on my face was the part that made me feel sick. I wasn't surprised. I didn't look caught. I looked like I knew the picture was being taken. I looked like I was cooperating, like I was part of it. Under the photos was a diary. The cover was cracked leather. The pages smelled like mold and that same metallic smell I had noticed in the hallway. On the first page, a name was written in messy handwriting. Arena. I didn't know who Arena was, but the way her name was written felt urgent, like it was the last thing she wanted to leave behind. I flipped through the diary, and at first it was normal. Notes about work, boredom, small fears, loneliness. Then the tone shifted. The handwriting became more rushed, more shaky, like she was writing while hiding, like she didn't have time. Some lines were underlined so hard the pen almost cut through the paper. She wrote about the mirror. She wrote about the room feeling alive. She wrote about a man who watched her through glass. And then she wrote things that made my throat tighten. She wrote, "He looks like me when he smiles." She wrote, "I see my face on him." She wrote, "He wears me when he sleeps." She wrote, "He stands by the mirror and practices." She wrote, "He says my name like it belongs to him." And then she wrote, over and over, like she was trying to carve the idea into reality. "If I disappear, don't look for me. He wants you to look." Near the end, one line was written in thick, angry pressure, like the page was being punished. "The room remembers." The last page didn't feel like a diary entry. It felt like a warning. "If he comes again, I will stay in the walls. I will learn his shape." I shut the diary and sat there, shaking, staring at the box, hearing my own breathing, and realizing the room was silent now. Too silent. It wasn't the calm kind. It was the kind where you feel watched because nothing else is moving. I wanted to leave, and I even stood up, like my body was ready to run, but I couldn't stop myself from checking the wall around the cavity again. That's when I saw the scratches. Deep, jagged lines carved into the paint where you would never normally look. It wasn't writing done neatly. It looked like it was carved in panic, like someone used a key or a blade or their nails until they broke. It said, "Arena was here," and under that, in smaller letters, it said, "Arena is still here." My stomach turned, and I felt the urge to vomit, not because of gore, but because the message felt fresh, like it wasn't a story from the past, like it was a present tense sentence. That was when I felt breath on the back of my neck. Warm, wet breath, so close it made my skin tighten. I turned around so fast, my shoulder hit the kitchen chair. The room was empty, but the air near the bathroom doorway felt colder, like a cold spot shaped like a person. I backed away without meaning to, and then I saw her. Not clearly, not like a costume or a special effect, more like something that didn't fully belong in this light. A woman's outline in the bathroom doorway, hair hanging forward like wet strings, skin too pale and cracked, like old paint breaking on a wall. Her eyes looked wrong. Not glowing, not red, just empty, like holes in a face. She didn't rush me. She didn't scream. She simply stood there like she had been waiting for me to finally notice. "You opened it," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like a person in the room. It sounded like a voice trapped inside a recording, slowed down, broken, dragged. I tried to speak, but my throat wouldn't cooperate. I forced out a thin sentence, and it sounded like someone else was using my mouth. I said I didn't know her. The woman tilted her head slowly, like she was listening to a lie. Then she said something that made the hair on my arms lift. She said, "You came back." My brain tried to fight that sentence. It tried to reject it. I took a step back, and she stepped forward in a normal way, like she belonged here more than I did. She raised her hand and touched my forehead with 2 cold fingers. And the moment she touched me, the room disappeared. I saw a bedroom that wasn't mine, but felt familiar. I saw the same mirror. I saw a man standing close to it, practicing a smile like a mask, practicing a voice like a costume. And the man's face was my face. Not similar. Mine. I felt panic flood my body like a memory, and I understood in a sick way that it wasn't my memory. It was hers. I felt hands on a throat. I felt nails scratching paint. I felt the urge to scream and not being able to. I stumbled back, choking on air, and when I blinked, the kitchen was back, and the woman was gone. The diary was still on the table. The box was still open. The apartment was still small, still nowhere to hide. But the air was different now. It felt like something had stepped out of hiding and had no intention of stepping back. I ran to the bathroom mirror because I needed to see my face, needed proof that I was still me. I stared at my reflection, breathing hard, whispering my name under my breath, like it could anchor me. "Dustin," I said softly. "Dustin Martin." My reflection stared back. Then, very slowly, it smiled. I did not smile. I felt my lips stay still, but the reflection's mouth lifted anyway, like it had its own choice. I stood there frozen, watching my own face betray me. And behind the wall, behind the headboard, from the place where the breathing always came from, I heard a soft reply, almost gentle, almost patient. "Not for long," the voice whispered. I didn't sleep after that night. I stayed on the bathroom floor until morning, staring at my reflection, waiting for it to move again. It didn't, but that almost felt worse. When the sun came up, the apartment looked normal. The mirror was just a mirror. The box was just a box. The diary was just paper. I tried to convince myself that fear had distorted everything, that I was reading meaning into random coincidences, that the landlord was just a strange old man who liked messing with people. But something inside me knew that logic was already losing ground.
The next few days were strange in small ways. I started finding things in my apartment that I didn't remember doing. A glass moved to the other side of the counter. My laptop open with files I didn't recall creating. My phone filled with voice memos I didn't remember recording. At first, I assumed I had recorded them accidentally. Then I listened to one. It was my voice, but it didn't sound like me. It was softer, slower, almost careful, like someone practicing how to sound human. The voice said my name again and again, like it was tasting it. Dustin. 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 Then it whispered another name. Arena. I deleted the file and told myself it was nothing. But the files kept coming back. Different times, different lengths. Sometimes just breathing, sometimes whispering. Sometimes talking about the room, about the mirror, about learning how to move correctly. I stopped checking my phone at night. My handwriting started changing. I noticed it when I signed a document at work, and the letters looked rounder, more careful, more feminine. My co-workers joked that my signature looked like a girl's handwriting. I laughed with them, but my stomach tightened. When I went home and checked the diary again, the letters in my notebook looked closer to Arena's writing than my own. I started practicing writing my name again, slowly, like a child learning to write for the first time. Then the neighbors started acting differently. The woman across the hall smiled at me one morning and said, "Good morning, Arena." I thought she was joking or confused. I corrected her politely. She apologized, but her expression was strange, like she had seen something she didn't want to explain. A few days later, the guy downstairs held the door for me and said, "You look different today, Arena." I froze. I asked how he knew that name. He looked confused and said, "That's what you told me last week." I had never spoken to him before. I started avoiding people. At night, I felt hands on my arms when I was half asleep. Not aggressive, not violent. More like someone testing whether a limb worked. I would wake up and my arm would be raised slightly, like someone had lifted it and let it fall. I started tying my hands loosely with a scarf when I slept, just to see if they would move. One morning, I woke up and the scarf was untied, folded neatly on the nightstand. The mirror became the worst part. Sometimes my reflection moved a fraction of a second later than I did. Sometimes it held eye contact when I looked away. Sometimes it practiced smiling. I started covering it with a towel, but the towel would be moved when I woke up, folded carefully, placed on the sink. I stopped covering it. One night, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. I started packing a bag. That's when I found a folder on my laptop that I had never seen before. It was hidden, password protected. I tried random passwords, then tried my birthday, then my name. None worked. On impulse, I typed Arena. It opened. Inside were videos of me. Not security camera footage, personal recordings. Me, standing in front of the mirror, speaking slowly, practicing sentences, practicing emotions, practicing how to blink, how to tilt my head, how to breathe. In one video, I looked straight into the camera and said, "I am learning. He is almost gone." I dropped the laptop and felt something inside me crack. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the lights on, watching the hallway, waiting. Around 3 in the morning, I heard footsteps in my apartment. Not outside, inside. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I held my breath and listened. They walked from the bedroom to the kitchen, then to the bathroom, then back, like someone testing the layout. I stood up and followed the sound. I saw myself walking, not in a reflection, not in a mirror. Me, my body,
My face, moving calmly through the apartment, touching objects, opening drawers, testing doors. I felt like I was watching someone else wearing my skin. When I spoke, my mouth moved, but the other version of me kept walking. When I tried to move, my body didn't respond. I realized I wasn't standing on the floor. I was sitting on the couch, frozen, watching. The other me walked to the mirror and stared into it, smiling. Then he spoke, but the voice was not mine. "I told you the room remembers," the voice said. "He learned my shape. Now I learn his." My body turned and walked toward me. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. I tried to stand. My legs didn't move. My hands felt numb. He knelt in front of me, inches from my face, studying me like a project. "You are heavy," he said softly. "You are slow, but I am patient." Then everything went dark.
When I woke up, I was in the basement of the building. I didn't even know there was a basement. My wrists were tied to a pipe. The light was dim. The air smelled like dust and old water. I could hear footsteps upstairs. Normal footsteps. Someone moving around the apartment. Someone making coffee. Someone humming quietly. My voice. I struggled against the ropes and shouted. My voice sounded wrong. It sounded thin and distant, like it was coming from far away. After a few minutes, footsteps came down the stairs. The door opened, and I saw myself. My body stood there, relaxed, wearing my clothes, holding a cup of coffee. He looked healthy, calm, alive. He looked at me like I was something broken. "You lived in my body," he said. "Now I live in yours. That is fair." I begged. I tried to explain. I tried to ask what he was. He listened patiently, like a teacher listening to a confused student. "I was Arena," he said. "Then I was the room. Then I was the mirror. Now I am you." He walked upstairs and closed the door. I stayed there for hours, days, I don't know. Time doesn't work the same when you're underground and losing yourself. Eventually, police came. Someone must have reported something. They found me screaming, dehydrated, shaking. They found my apartment upstairs, clean, normal, lived in by a quiet young woman named Arena, who claimed I was an intruder who broke into her home. Her paperwork was perfect. Her lease was perfect. Her handwriting matched the diary. Her voice matched the recordings. Her face was mine. They believed her. Now I'm in a hospital. They think I'm delusional. They think I invented everything. Sometimes I think that too. But then I look at my hands, and they feel lighter, thinner, less solid. And sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still feel the mirror behind me, waiting. I don't know what I am now, but I know one thing. The room remembers, and I am the ghost now. She is alive.